Hello, hello, hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. We are live on the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for Impact Wrestling Slammiversary 2021 preview and predictions. Let's get to it. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out! Welcome, everyone. We are live right now. We are here to talk about Impact Wrestling's huge pay-per-view coming up this Saturday. Over 7 matches, a huge card. The AEW World Champion Kenny Omega will be defending the Impact World Championship. We're going to get into that. We want to hear your predictions in the live chat. But I got to introduce my esteemed colleague on this preview here. He is a part of the family over at Fightful Wrestling, co-host of the Fight Talk podcast. He is my 90s brethren himself, Steven Jensen. Thank you for joining me, brother.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Sid and or SP3, whatever you prefer. I would probably always know you as SP3, but this is an honor. I really appreciate you inviting me on here. As you know, we'll be doing the Impact Watch Along tonight on Twitch. So we do that every Thursday, twitch.tv/FightfulGaming. SP3, me, Joel Pearl will be on there talking about the show tonight. So anyone who's watching this today, check it out. I'm definitely an Impact guy, so I'm definitely looking forward to Slammiversary, man. Once again, thanks for having me on. We are linked forever by our love for the Mighty Ducks trilogy and Mighty Ducks Game Changers show. So there you go.
Absolutely. I've said this to Steven when we did our special Mighty Ducks podcast over on the Fightful Twitch page. He is the Charlie Conway to my Russ Tyler. We are connected in brother, and he brought me onto the Mighty Ducks team, so I will forever be indebted to him. But yes, you guys are going to have a great time with us. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some 90s callbacks, so if you're into nostalgia, we always like that as well. But we're here to talk about Impact Wrestling. The first time Sportskeeda Wrestling has me previewing an Impact Wrestling pay-per-view. You said you're into Impact. You're an Impact guy. What's your level of interest from 1 to 10 for the Slammiversary card?
With Slammiversary being one of the bigger shows of the year, and they only have 4 true pay-per-views a year, right? So it's my interest is always up there. Now, as we go through the card, you'll probably get a pretty good gauge for what I'm really looking forward to and what I'm not on the show. But overall, I am looking forward to it. And there's going to be fans there in Nashville, Tennessee, which is great. I wanted to be there live. The tickets were very expensive. I know that's one criticism that the event got, because a lot of fans wanted to go but couldn't really afford it, unfortunately. But outside of that, I'm glad fans are going to be back. And there are a lot of really good matches on the show that I am looking forward to for sure.
We got your Fightful brethren in the live chat, Joel Pearl, joining us live. If you are new to discovering Steven Jensen, go over on the Twitter machine. Follow the good brother at @FightTalk_. He gets got great tweets, great analysis on the professional wrestling world, as well as the MMA world. The Fight Talk podcast is one of the better podcasts out there, talking about the whole world of combat sports as well as professional wrestling. So this guy is someone you need to know. So go over and check him out over there. But for now, let's get into the Impact Slammiversary 2021 card. And it is a card that they've advertised as their world is changing once again. We know last year at Slammiversary, you had the Good Brothers debut. You had so many different stars. Heath Miller debuted. This was the introduction for Brian Myers. So many stars that were released from WWE during the Black Wednesday last year debuted at Slammiversary 1 year ago. Eric Young was in the main event. Rich Swann returned from injury. But once again, they are promoting that the world is going to change again. Before we get into who you think is going to debut, let's talk about one of the matches where we are going to have to predict who we think is going to make a return or debut in Impact Wrestling. It's going to be for the Knockouts Championship. Deonna Purrazzo, the Virtuosa, will defend against a mystery opponent. Deonna Purrazzo has been reigning as Knockouts champion ever since December of last year, when she regained the title from Su Yung, who beat her at Bound for Glory. She's gone on a great run, defeating the likes of Taya Valkyrie, Rosemary, Havok, and she's been very dominant. she's had by her side Susan, the former Su Yung, as well as Kimberly, but now she has spread shed the dead weight from her back. She is now going out alone, and she wants to prove herself as not only the greatest knockouts champion of all time, but the greatest knockout of all time. So Gail Kim has gave her this challenge of versing a mystery opponent, because Deonna says she doesn't care who she has to verse. She can prepare for anyone. She doesn't even need to know who she's going to face. So who do you think is going to be this mystery opponent, Steven, and who do you think wins, Deonna Purrazzo versus TBA?
So, full disclosure, I actually know who it's going to be, or at least who it's supposed to be, because I know they're in Nashville. I'm not going to say it, but I'll say this. If it is who I'm hearing it's supposed to be, this is going to be a really, really, really good match, possibly, maybe even the best match of the night. And part of it is on who I believe the mystery opponent is going to be. The other part is Deonna Purrazzo has been a great champion for Impact. People forget too, when Su Yung defeated her for the title, that was supposed to be Kylie Rae. And then, all that happened, and now she's over with the NWA. But it was an interesting time, because I feel like in hindsight, Purrazzo probably just should have never lost the title at all. Like, it should just be one long title run. Not that I don't like Su Yung, but you know what I mean. Like, Purrazzo has been a great champion. Now, what I'll say is, as far as a prediction, I'm gonna say Purrazzo retains, but this, like I said, if it is who I think it's gonna be a really, really good match. And also, almost as a running joke, and to continue the continuity with the Twitch streams, I hope it's Brooke Tessmacher. That'd be great. If it was Brooke Tessmacher, I'd love to see her on the show. So I miss Brooke in Impact Wrestling. They always show her her flashback moments during the commercial breaks on Twitch. So I'd like to see her on the show. I don't think that's who the mystery opponent's going to be, but shout out to Brooke Tessmacher. But yeah, I'm going Purrazzo to retain. But like I said, I think we're gonna have a really good match here for the Knockouts Championship.
Like, we want all you folks watching this preview to go, to Fight TV or to pay-per-view and order the Impact Slammiversary 2021. So Steven is doing the smart thing by not spoiling this for you guys, but I am going to ask him to spoil it for me after we're done here. But I'm going to predict the mystery opponent to be Mickie James, because during that promo segment with Gail Kim and Deonna Purrazzo, they kind of gave us a red herring directly after, when they did a flashback to Slammiversary, I think it was 2011, where Mickie James versus Angelina Love for the Knockouts Championship. Mickie James has been very, promoting women's wrestling outside of WWE, not liking how WWE treated women's wrestling as well as herself during the end of her run. She is promoting the NWA Empower show. This would open the door for a partnership between NWA and Impact Wrestling for the Empower show, and they have so many knockouts on this roster in Impact Wrestling that I think it would be a great merger and really, elevate the prestige of this Empower show and make it, fans that aren't regularly watching NWA and NWA Power be into this show. So I think it's going to be Mickie James, but I also do agree with Steven that even if it is Mickie, I think Deonna Purrazzo is going to retain the championship. I do agree also that I think her run should have continued, because it felt right for Kylie Rae to beat her at Bound for Glory, because they built Kylie Rae as this kind of underdog to, triumph over the dominant heel champion. But if we didn't have, Kylie Rae got out and then Su Yung come in and Su Yung beat her for only a month-long reign, Deonna Purrazzo would be a year-long champion. She won the title back at Slammiversary 2020 against Jordan Grace, and in my opinion, the match of the night. And I think that this match also has the potential, regardless of who the mystery opponent is, of being the match of the night as well.
Yeah, that's I totally agree. Like, I remember last year, because me and Sean do the post shows and I remember both of us saying, like, the women stole the show on Slammiversary last year. And I think the world of Jordan Grace also. I like her and Rachel Ellering a lot. I'm hoping that they get added to the show. Like, I'm assuming something will happen tonight to get them added. Because, I mean, there's a lot of fans out there that are always like, where's the, like, why aren't we seeing more, like, great women's wrestling? And, like, Impact's Knockouts division has a lot of great women. So yeah, I'm totally with you, man. And I think we're just going to get a really good matchup. And I like your analysis too about the potential crossover between NWA and Impact, because I think we do need to get more of that.
Absolutely. I've been liking the little bit of crossover that we've been getting with AEW and Impact Wrestling. Of course, like many fans, I would like for a little bit more of Impact on AEW more than we're seeing, mostly it's AEW on Impact Wrestling with Kenny Omega, the Good Brothers going back and forth. Private Party has been on Impact Wrestling. I would like to see guys like Sami Callihan and Moose and Deonna Purrazzo show up on AEW. I've been really enjoying the New Japan crossovers. I got my El Phantasmo shirt on here. I really enjoyed El Phantasmo's short little run, his matchup with Josh Alexander for the X Division Championship. Kojima had just been making appearances. So, to have NWA as well, it would give Impact the kind of must-watch feel because, some people don't always, wake up at the crack of dawn like me to watch New Japan shows. So they want to see, and they can watch Impact Wrestling to see guys like Kojima and El Phantasmo, or even Finn Juice, the former Impact Tag Team Champions. But NWA has a surplus of women's wrestlers that would be nice to cross over. Like a Camille would be awesome in Impact Wrestling, in my opinion. They already do have Kylie Ray back. I don't know how that would go as far as that kind of crossover, but there's a lot of different women that can intermingle. What would be your number one dream match between the women of NWA versus the women of Impact Wrestling?
Ooh, all right, so one that I think would be, probably one of my favorite wrestlers in the world right now is Serena Deeb. Like, I like her a lot. I'd like to see her and Deonna go at it. I think that'd be a really good match. I think that Thunder Rosa and Deonna would be a really good match as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Thunder Rosa would still be considered NWA at this point. I think she's still technically with them, but we see her on AEW all the time too. But those would be the two first ones that would come to mind, would be Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb against Deonna Purrazzo. And you could also put Jordan Grace in there. Deonna and Jordan on the Impact side, Thunder Rosa and Serena on the NWA side. And I like Camille a lot too. I think she's definitely the right person to be the women's champion for the National Wrestling Alliance right now. The story made sense. The matches have been good. She just isn't quite on that same level just yet, but that's going to come with time. The Deeb and Thunder Rosa have just been good for so long that it's just going to take a minute for Camille to really get all the way up there. But I do like what she's been doing so far as the champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Camille has just such a great look. It's kind of, so where Camille is at is similar to Jay Cargill in AEW. I made that comparison before, and I kind of see the similarities, but I definitely agree with you. Working with women like Serena Deeb and Thunder Rosa is only going to make her better overall. But we talked about one surprise. You couldn't give it away because you do have a little bit of spoiler, but I'm going to ask you for at least one or two spoilers here. Before we get into another match, Steven, and let us know in the live chat as well, if you're with us live. Thank you for joining us. Let us know what you think some of the other surprises are going to be at Slammiversary. We've seen on the video package, similar to last year, where they teased the likes of Eric Young, the Good Brothers coming into Impact Wrestling, and they did come. We also saw them tease, other superstars that didn't come. So we already know with the Slammiversary video package, they teased Samoa Joe coming in, and he's already back in NXT, so that's not going to happen. But we've seen teases for Kazuka Okada, Tetsuya Naito, Mickie James. There's a lot of different ladies, the Iconics. So who do you think is one or two surprises that we're going to see throughout the night at Slammiversary?
I do think it's really possible we see the Iconics. I think that's definitely a good possibility. I probably would have said Chelsea Green, but she just showed up in Ring of Honor, so that was pretty surprising to see that. I'm trying to think of who. I think a lot of people would probably think Strowman maybe, because we hadn't heard anything about him. Now I'm assuming he'll probably wind up back in the WWE for less money. It's just my personal speculation of what I think will eventually happen with Strowman. But if that's not the route he goes, and Impact can afford Strowman, I could see him maybe going over there. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see some indie guys pop in, but it wouldn't be the same type of thing. I doubt we see Okada or Naito, but I think that would be amazing if either showed up. I'd imagine Okada is still probably a little sour about the last time Impact used him and everything, made him like the Green Hornet sidekick or whatever that whole thing was. But yeah, I'd say the Iconics are probably a pretty solid pick. I don't know. Who do you think? I'm trying to think of like who's maybe like recently free that would make sense for Impact.
To answer one of the questions we got here in the live chat, my brother over from True Hill Heat, Romeo, is with us. He says Iconics 90 days up ? And yes, in fact, their 90 days was up. I think earlier this week, Mickie James, as well as the Iconics, confirmed that their 90 days from when they were released in April is up, so they can appear on this show. And I totally agree with you. They seem like the most likely and the best fit for Impact Wrestling with their Knockouts tag team division, which in my opinion on mainstream wrestling television is the best women's tag team division out there, because I'm not going to get started on how needless the NXT women's tag team titles are, and the fact that we only have 3 tag teams on the WWE main roster between 2 different brands for their tag team titles. You got Fire and Flavor, you got Rosemary and Havok, you got Rachel Ellering and Jordan Grace. Tenille Dashwood is always looking for a tag team partner, but the Iconics, or as they kind of, I think they trademarked the inspiration of Cassie Lee and Jessica McKay. If they came in, I think that this would really boost up the Knockouts tag team division. So they seem like my number one choice as far as like the most likely. I could see someone like a Wesley Blake coming in, someone that's been kind of doing the media rounds, and someone who, didn't get too much of a platform on WWE. I can see, Steve Macklin has done an impressive job of debuting and being dominant in his few appearances with Impact Wrestling. But the tag team division, I've been so on with Impact Wrestling. So if Wesley Blake comes in as like a tag team partner for Steve Macklin, I think they would be an additional tag team that kind of boosts up their tag team division. So that's someone who I think not a lot of people would mention to us that could be likely to show up at Slammiversary.
I think those are really good predictions, especially because, like you said, you could always pair Blake and Cutler back up together. I don't know if Buddy Murphy's free or not, but like he's a dude who I think he'll be a star anywhere he goes. Like that guy, I really want to see him in New Japan, because like I think he would just kill it over there and like totally reinvent himself to a level. There are certain guys, like when they got released, I obviously I never want to see someone lose their job. That's like, I want to make that clear. I'm never like rallying for someone to get fired from a job ever. I'm just not that kind of person. But there is a silver lining sometimes in this, where like guys like Buddy Murphy, for instance, is like, this dude is going to up his market value significantly wrestling other places. And like, he's going to that guy has everything it's going to take to be like massive, I think, somewhere else. But I think Impact Wrestling would be a good place for him too. Like, I think he just had, especially with the Forbidden Door concept. Like, I mean, there's so much, then that's a whole other conversation, but with fans coming back, I really feel like the Forbidden Door thing hasn't even really started. Like, we're going to be seeing so much crossover in the next few months, and then just like dream situations with fans being there. So yeah, anyway, I once again, I don't know if Murphy's even eligible to show up anywhere at this point, but if he is, I'd love to see him pop in Slammiversary.
I would love that as well. I think he did confirm that he is under the 90-day clause. Someone else that I just thought of, Alexander Wolf, Axel Tenscher, I think he's going by now. He's someone that I think only had a 30-day clause, so he could be available. There's a lot of other people out there, so please let us know in the live chat throughout this stream here who you think is going to show up at Slammiversary. We got Joel Pearl in the live chat saying Kylie Ray versus Susan is the comedy match I am living for. I'm here for it. I've been loving Susan. I really am upset that she is not on the card. I hope that she gets added in by the Go Home show at the very least. I've been loving me some Susan.
Yeah, it's funny because we always joke on the stream that Susan's gimmick is basically just losing. Like, it's like, but it's okay because Su Yung is so well protected that like Susan can take all the L's, and when she transforms, she wins as Su Yung. And they did start a new thing where like she ran into Father James Mitchell backstage on the last episode. So something's brewing there for Su Yung, but I'm with you. She should definitely be included on the show, in my opinion.
I agree. One of the best characters, and Pro Wrestle Me needs to be a t-shirt ASAP. That's all I know. But speaking of guys that's been released from WWE showing up in Impact Wrestling, moves us on to our next matchup to preview. It's going to be W. Morrissey, formerly known as Big Cass in WWE, going one-on-one with the stalwart of Impact Wrestling, Eddie Edwards. 1 year ago, Eddie Edwards won the Impact World Championship for the second time. W. Morrissey debuted in Impact Wrestling at the last pay-per-view, Rebellion, in April. Ever since then, he's gone on a dominant run, defeating the likes of Willie Mack and Rick Swann. He's drawn the ire of Eddie Edwards and Kojima by attacking Eddie Edwards in the parking lot prior to Kojima and Eddie Edwards' dream match. We haven't seen Eddie Edwards really since then. We'll probably see him on the Go Home show. So this is more of a grudge match here. Who do you got winning, W. Morrissey versus Eddie Edwards? And what you've been thinking about W. Morrissey in Impact Wrestling?
I think Morrissey's doing the best work of his career. Like, and he looks like physically in the best shape. And like, he's a guy who I think is going to have a real good second kind of act in wrestling. You know, the first was kind of marred with personal stuff that he was going through and yada yada, and like, and it seems like he's got it all figured out now. Like, this dude looks like he's in great physical shape. He seems like he's in great mental health and everything. Like, and he goes out there and he can work. I mean, this guy, for a guy his size, he can really move around. I loved last week how they had him just beat 3 jobbers at the same time. It was like choke slam, power bomb, something else. He did like 3 moves back to back to back, just like stacked them all on top of each other. And I'm like, if he's not going to have just one-on-one matches, like, do that. Just keep doing that. Have him just beat up a bunch of guys at one time. Like, I'm here for it. So I think Morrissey can be really big money for any company right now. And I think Impact's really lucky to have him. And that all being said, like, I think he should beat Eddie Edwards. Like, I think it'd be smart for him to beat Eddie Edwards, but it's hard to pick against Eddie because he's such Impact's dude. You know what I mean? Like, they're constantly, not saying that they're wrong to do this, but they're constantly going back to him. Like, when they need a main event, it's just Eddie Edwards. Like, okay, you're automatically right back in the spot. I think a lot of people have a disconnect with like Edwards being like the Tommy Dreamer 2.0 guy still. It's still a little strange. So that all being said, like, my pick, like, I'm going to go with Morrissey because I feel like Impact has to recognize what they have here. Because this is a dude. I know not everyone's going to agree, but I think it's good to have some outliers like that on your show. Guys that like look totally unbeatable. Because then when they do get beat, you know, very rarely, it's a really big deal. And I think Morrissey could be that kind of guy for Impact, especially because Impact's roster does kind of tend to be, you know, their average height of their wrestlers is probably fairly average height. You know what I mean? So Morrissey is like a giant in comparison. So I got to go with Morrissey. My heart is saying Morrissey, my head's saying Edwards, but I'm gonna go with Morrissey. What about you, man?
I really am with you where I'm kind of on the fence on this one because I kind of see one of the ready-made main event matches for Impact to go to. If my prediction for the main event is right, is whoever wins the main event versus Eddie Edwards. Because, you know, Eddie Edwards has the long-term feud with Sami Callihan, and Eddie versus Kenny Omega is a dream match. And one of the main matches I wanted to see when Kenny Omega has come over to Impact Wrestling. So they could definitely use this victory to kind of catapult him back into the main event scene. But I want to see the continuation of this push for W. Morrissey. I agree with you. He looks in phenomenal shape. Like, he looks like an absolute monster. How they tried to present him toward the latter half of his WWE run in feuds with Daniel Bryan. He's finally got there look-wise, where even before he has a mic in his hand or you see him in the ring, he looks like an intimidating force. He looks like a guy that could beat anyone in the world. So I think the right move is for W. Morrissey to get the victory here. We got another good question here in the live chat from Romeo. Steven, how do you expect this crowd to be in Nashville, Tennessee?
I hope they're loud. I hope they're loud the whole show. Now, if the show sucks, I hope they're not just like faking it. But I think that I think it's going to be a good show. And I mean, Nashville is, I mean, that's basically Impact territory. I mean, like that's like I lived in Nashville for like 10 years, and their home base is right there in like the Gulch area. So like it's I would really hope I mean, it's also like the fans haven't been able to see Impact live in a long time, and so I'm hoping the fans are really into the show. Now, that being said, Ring of Honor Best in the World, granted it was like pod seating still, but that crowd seemed really flat for that show in my opinion. And I really hope that doesn't happen to Impact.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because I really enjoyed Ring of Honor Best in the World. And although the fans weren't that loud, you could tell the wrestlers were motivated. I would say like the last like hour to hour and a half of that show just had banger after banger after banger with Brody King versus Jay Lethal, Tony Deppen versus Dragon Lee. My favorite match of the night, Jonathan Gresham versus Mike Bennett. That pure rules match was amazing. And the tag team title match, I'm a OG Homicide fan, New York born and bred, so I was happy to see Homicide back in there getting the tag team titles, and of course the main event with Bandito and Roosh. But I totally agree with you. Like when Bandito wins the title, I expect the Ring of Honor pop for a new champion, and it was like very silenced, and it just felt like we are still kind of in the pandemic. We're still coming out of it. We're in just a position. Last night on AEW, that was probably the loudest crowd we've heard in the last 16 months in Austin, Texas there. So hopefully we can get at the very least somewhere in the middle with the Nashville crowd this Saturday.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm definitely not expecting like AEW last night levels of hype from Impact, but if they could replicate it even to some degree, I'll be happy with that. I mean, we're not going to get into it obviously, but like Impact show last night was off the charts good. AEW show last night was off the charts good. Like that was a perfect Wednesday night wrestling show. Like, so the fans had a lot of stuff to cheer for. It's kind of my point. Like they were going to be loud anyway, but they had a great show to be cheering for. So I think the Impact crowd's going to come in really hot. And it's going to be on, the wrestlers and the show itself to keep that energy going.
Yes, like we said in our Mighty Ducks podcast preview, like I thought last week's AEW Road Rager was like Mighty Ducks 1. Last night, AEW Fighter Fest night 1 was like Mighty Ducks 2. This was it just felt more vibrant. It felt more fun on this one. That's why I would say it was slightly better than Road Rager, even though Road Rager was another amazing show. Last night was Mighty Ducks 2. Favorite.
We just have to, same here. So my favorite as well. But I'm hoping that Fighter Fest Part 2 doesn't wind up being like D3, because that one the series did take a little bit of a dip towards the end there. So but if we can get more of like a Game Changers vibe, like
exactly,
let's kind of pretend like D3 was like a dream, and then like we're back to where we're at. Anyone listening to this that has not seen the Mighty Ducks is so lost right now, but I'm with you, man. D2 is the best Mighty Ducks movie. That's what's up.
Absolutely. We'll get back to Impact Wrestling. Don't worry, folks. Next up, we got, speaking of the Knockouts Tag Team Division, their titles are going to be up for grabs as Fire and Flavor will defend the titles against Havok and Rosemary. Fire and Flavor regained the Knockouts Tag Team Championships back at Under Siege over Rachel Ellering and Jordan Grace. But they've been kind of in the crossfire from Havok and Rosemary, the Devil's favorite tag team, in my opinion, right here. Two dark forces, former rivals, teaming up together. A couple of weeks ago, they threw Fire and Flavor in the trash, where they found the trash bag labeled Mickey, which I thought was a great touch, great little tease for what might be happening this Saturday. But it seems that Havok and Rosemary kind of have the number of Fire and Flavor. So who do you think wins this one and walks out the Knockouts Tag Team Champions?
So I think Fire and Flavor retains, and I think that this would be like, if the Iconics are going to debut, it would be right after Fire and Flavor retains, because I think that's what you would probably want to set up immediately. Yeah. Because especially with like Fire and Flavor, with like the kind of their characters and like their kind of kind of how they're portrayed on the show, I think that the Iconics would be like a really good foil to them. Like, because, you know, back and forth on the microphone, like they're both two very different tag teams. They're really very similar in ways too. Like, I think they would mesh really well. I'm a big Peyton Royce fan. I'm still not huge on Billy Kay in the ring, I'll be honest, but I think that Peyton is good enough that like Billy doesn't have to do a whole lot, and I think the match could be really good. So I got to go Fire and Flava, mainly because I think that's maybe what they set up next with the Iconics. But I'll also say this. I say it on the Impact streams all the time. Like, I really wish they would have kept the titles on Grace and Ellering, because they only had the belts for like whatever it was, a few weeks. And they were like, they could have been a great tag team. I mean, obviously they're teasing their split right now and everything, but they could have done that as the champions. Like, they could have had a real title run and then done all this. But that being said, we're at where we're at. I think Fire and Flava is a great team for the Impact Knockouts titles. They were who I wanted to win the tournament to crown the champions, and they wound up winning. So like, I've been a supporter of that team for sure. And I think Havok and Rosemary, they're going to look better than what people, I think, probably. If you haven't watched Impact in a while and you saw this on paper, you might be like, Impact and Rosemary, Rosemary and Havok, like, what? But you know what I'm saying? But like, I think that this will surprise people that hadn't been watching the show. This will actually be a pretty good match.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a pretty good match, and I definitely agree with you. Fire and Flava have really like come into their own. They just ooze charisma, and they would be like great opponents for the Iconics. And although I do also agree that, you know, Billy Kay is not the best in the ring, I think that she's another one that just has boatloads of charisma. She's a good talker. She's just naturally funny, and that wasn't always capitalized on in WWE. And Impact does have this side where they can, you know, have a lot of humor. You know, the Wrestle House was some of the funniest stuff in pro wrestling in 2020. You got the Swingers Palace, which is always brings out a laugh from me on week-to-week basis. I would love to see the Iconics in Swingers Palace, honestly. I'm just thinking about that. That just hit my mind right there. But I kind of think that we're going to differ on this one, though. I think that Havok and Rosemary are going to beat Fire and Flava for the tag team championships. But I do agree, then probably the Iconics will debut. I think that you kind of have to save that Fire and Flava Iconic showdown. I think that is the type of matchup that you want at like a Bound for Glory. So maybe I'm just saying that Havok and Rosemary are going to be transitional champions, pass it on to the Iconics, and then we have Fire and Flava in the challengers spot against the Iconics at Bound for Glory. But we're a few months away from that, so I think you hold off on that match. You have Havok and Rosemary win here, and the Iconics come out as their first challengers.
Yeah, that'll make sense too. I like it. So you've got Havok and Rosemary. I've got Fire and Flava for that one.
Yes, sir. We got in the comments here in the live chat, Joel Pearl saying, feels like ROH has trouble miking fans too. Impact's attendance might be 50 people, but they'll make noise. I do kind of see that happening, and especially because of the performers and the matches that we have on this card, I think that they're going to get a little bit more from their fans and probably learn from the mistake as far as like miking that ROH had at Best in the World. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, I think that even if Impact isn't getting a lot of noise, they'll just pipe noise in. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I mean, I think that's the truth. Like, because Impact, I mean, they've been doing it this past year, and I mean, I know the last time I watched like any WWE, it seemed like even though there was fans there, they were still piping noise in. So so I think they'll probably just follow suit. To be honest, Ring of Honor probably should have done that too. With how the show came off. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it. I think the Impact crowd is going to be loud naturally, but if anything is like they're sitting back there and they're like, what is going on out there? You just hit that button for the noise and, you know, it helps out a little bit.
Absolutely. Like I will say, like with WWE, it's become a hindrance because they've too much pipe in the noise. With Impact, I think we went so long where they had the empty arena where we didn't hear anything, and then like I think a couple of months in, they started piping in the noise. It was an improvement. I was like, oh, this is actually nice to have the piped in noise and not have it be so quiet. So I have different feelings. I don't keep the same energy. I'm sorry, but it's Impact Wrestling adding of piped in noise was a benefit for the shows, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And if you ask Joel Pearl, who's watching right now, his theory is that there were fans behind the curtains in the stands that were making all the noise. So
There you
there you go, Joel. That's
Joel's got his theories. I like it. Next up, we got another grudge match here, as it's going to be Moose going one-on-one with Chris Sabin. This match has been building over a couple of months now. We had Moose back at Under Siege. Before Under Siege, he beat Chris Sabin's temporary tag team partner, James Storm, and take him out with an ankle injury by stomping his leg, pulmonizing his leg in a steel chair. Chris Sabin has looked for revenge following Moose's failed attempt at the Impact World Championship against Kenny Omega at Against All Odds. When Moose tried to hijack the show, Chris Sabin came out and challenged him to this matchup. These two men couldn't even get along when they went against Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers a couple of weeks ago on Impact Wrestling, with Moose walking out on the team and beating down Chris Sabin as well as Tommy Dreamer. So who do you see winning this grudge match here? Moose versus Chris Sabin.
When it goes even farther back to, I can't remember what the show was. You may have mentioned it during that, but there was like the 6-man match where it was like Moose, Sabin, and it was like supposed to be Sabin, Shelley, and Edwards maybe, and Shelley was out. So
I think it was
hard
to kill when it was Omega and the Good Brothers. It was supposed to be Rich Swann and the Machine Guns, and I think Alex Shelley was out and Moose replaced him.
Okay, that's probably what I'm trying to think of, because like, so I remember even back then it was like this tease of like, can they coexist, right? Like that's always the big but here's the thing, and I've said this a lot as well, like what Impact should have done, in my opinion, is they should have done Callihan and Omega at Against All Odds, and this should have been Moose versus Kenny at Slammiversary for the title. Now, I don't know if that had to do with Moose's contract, because I know he like recently re-signed, but I don't know if that was after they had put together everything for Against All Odds. I don't know the timeline there, but I think Moose has been they've done the best job of building Moose over the last year or two of anyone in the company. And I think if anyone is going to beat or if anyone should beat Kenny for the title from Impact, I think it should be Moose. So like, I wish this was all reversed. Now, that being said, I think Moose versus Chris Sabin is going to be a really damn good match. I mean, Chris Sabin's one of the best straight up just workers TNA's ever had or Impact's ever had. And Moose, like I said, is like, he's never been more believable. He's never been better on the mic. He's never been better in the ring. He's never been in better shape. Like he's the real deal, Moose. Like he's the total package of a pro wrestler right now, in my opinion. And, for a prediction, it's tough because Sabin, it's like, do you give Sabin the win because like he's like been your guy for so long, and you know, Shelley, the situation with Shelley, to my understanding, is like because he works as like he has like a job outside of wrestling as well, and because of the pandemic, like he cannot risk being in wrestling and also being a part of that. So I don't know when he's gonna be back. So it's like, I don't know. It's a tough one to call. Now, personally speaking, almost for the same exact reasons I picked W. Morrissey, I would also pick Moose, because I just think that Moose getting the win, you got to keep him at that upper tier of Impact, because regardless of what happens in the main event, whether Kenny retains or Sami wins the title, Moose should be right there as like the next guy to challenge, or one of the next couple of guys to challenge. Now you can say the same about Chris Sabin, you really could, but like I just think they've done such a damn good job with Moose that you can't screw that up. So I'm going to take Moose to defeat Chris Sabin, but I think it's going to be a damn good match. What about you?
I think it's going to be a really good matchup, and I totally agree with you. Like Moose should have been I said this after Kenny Omega won at Rebellion, that this is leading to Moose versus Kenny at Slammiversary. I thought that Omega might win at Slammiversary, and then Samoa Joe come out and challenge Kenny Omega, and he's like the returning hero. I had it all booked up in my head, and it's gone sideways. And I also, prior to this whole Kenny Omega coming into Impact Wrestling, after Bound for Glory last October on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel, I said that Moose was going to beat Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship. I will die on the hill and say Moose would be Impact World Champion right now going into this show if Omega never stepped foot in Impact Wrestling, because the way they made him look after that cinematic match against EC3 at Bound for Glory, it was like a whole new door open for Moose. He was taking it up a level, and immediately after that, Rich Swann beat Eric Young on the post Bound for Glory Impact Wrestling episode, and immediately they kickstarted the Rich Swann Moose feud. So they set up different challengers as well with like Chris Bay and Sami Callihan, but it was like Moose was like the dark cloud over the title reign of Rich Swann, and it seems that the whole Kenny Omega coming in has kind of deterred Moose and the push that he was getting. So I definitely think that Moose is going to win here, and that they need to keep him at a certain level, because regardless of who they're going to have eventually beat Omega, if it's Callihan at this show or somebody else, I think Moose needs to become the Impact World Champion at the very least by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, because Moose, especially re-signing with the company, they need to invest in him long term, and he's the type of guy that could be one of the faces of Impact Wrestling.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And part of that too is like, if the kind of reports and stuff are accurate out there, it sounds like Moose was offered some pretty big deals with some other major companies. And part of me, it's the same kind of thing with Jordan Grace. I have to imagine that when they re-signed, that had to have been part of it. Like, I don't think they're the kind of people that would like hold up the company or like make all these like crazy demands. But I think there has to be something included where Moose is like, like they're offering me like this, and this over here, but I don't want to go. Like, can you at least like guarantee that I actually win this title? Like, if you can guarantee me like a good title run, like I'm going to stay. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what the hell they're going to do to me over here. So like, I want to stay, but I need some sort of guarantee of being used a certain way, which I think is totally fair. Once again, I don't think you can sit there and go, I have to be the champion the entire time of my contract. I don't think anyone's going to go for that, but there's no harm in being like, hey, look, like you've built me, like even you mentioned the EC3 feud, which is a really good thing to bring up, because that was a big turning the corner moment for Moose. And I think that was Slammiversary last year, if I remember correctly.
When I think that was when we had the teaser at the end of it was like Thanos coming at the end of like Avengers Age of Ultron, where EC3 at the end of the show was like, oh, I'm here.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, I think that feud helped Moose tremendously, as a character especially. And then and that's when I thought they were going to really start turning him babyface, was then. Because that was another thing that marred the thing with Kenny was, and it's another thing with this match. I don't understand. We'll talk about the main event in a second, but I don't understand why Impact hasn't been, they keep putting heels against Omega, but they're just pseudo baby faces just by default, because they're the Impact wrestlers trying to get the title back from Kenny to bring back to the company. But I don't understand why they didn't over the last, even since like because the EC3 feud to me was very much like the whole story was like, hey, you're getting too flashy now. Like, you're caring about the jewelry and the money and all this stuff outside of wrestling. Like, prove to me that like you're still a badass. And like Moose and like EC3 asked for it. He was like down on the ground, like, finish me. You know what I mean? And like Moose did it. And like from that point on, I think they should have been building Moose as a babyface, because then you have this super over mega babyface in Moose, who's like totally credible for the title. And then on top of that, he's trying to get the title back to Impact Wrestling. The fans would be really, really behind it. But instead, they keep putting these heels in there with Kenny, which is just kind of strange that they haven't built them as they're trying to build Sami as a babyface in a very short amount of time. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, I couldn't agree more about Moose. Like, we're both on the same page. They need to push him. He needs to be used as a top guy, and it would be smart for him to beat Chris Sabin on this show. So.
And like, you bring up a great point that both of Sami and Moose, even before this whole Kenny Omega came in, they were teasing babyface, like going babyface with both of them, and they kind of just took their foot off the gas. Like with Sami, he just felt like it was time for him to be a babyface. He was feuding with RVD, and then once RVD and Katie Forbes left the company, they were like, "Oh no, we're just gonna go back to Sami being a heel." Now he's corrupted Ken Shamrock, and Ken Shamrock's a heel now. Now Ken Shamrock's gone, but we still stick with Sami as a heel. Oh, now Kenny's here, so now he's a babyface. And then you know with Moose, it just feels like ever since he failed to beat Austin Aries at Slammiversary 2018, they have never got him back to where he was as a babyface and how over he was with the crowd at Slammiversary, because they didn't pull the trigger then. So it just seems like they've been very hesitant with the trigger ever since pulling it all the way and making Moose their top guy.
Yeah, but I also think Moose has improved significantly since then.
I agree.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if back then was the right time or not, because I also, like, I remember the first time I saw Moose had to have been in Ring of Honor. And I remember back then it was like he had a lot of potential for sure. He was very athletic with his football background, and he was able to connect with the crowd in certain ways pretty early on. That was pretty impressive. But he was still, for lack of better words, he was still kind of green. But like now he isn't. Like now he's very solid in the ring. He's way better on the microphone than he was a couple years ago. Way better. Like I used to be in the camp of like, get this guy a manager, like have him stand back like Brock, have someone who can talk really well, talk for him and just hype him up. Now he doesn't really need that. But I get what you're saying, but I also think that just to Moose's credit, I think in the last couple of years, he's improved drastically. So gotta give him credit for that.
I'm someone else that discovered Moose in ROH, and I was always into the Moose chant. That was always our thing when we used to go to the New York Hammerstein Ballroom shows. He was managed by, you might know him as Malcolm Bivens now. He was Stokely Hathaway then. I remember all those things, but totally agree. Like Moose overall, like in the ring, on the mic, and then his look overall, he's gotten to amazing shape himself. Like we talked about with W. Morrissey, Moose is in the shape of his life, and he looks like a main eventer now. We got in the live chat here, fifth generation Carney saying Impact had the best piped and sound during the no fan era. I gotta agree with you, because I think it was because they waited so long to put it in. It was immediate difference when they did institute it. Yeah,
that's totally true. And it's sad because like I don't know like how many fans are in this camp, but like I definitely know of fans that I've talked to that just weren't watching Impact because there was no crowd. They were like, it was just too strange for them to watch when it was just dead, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I agree. They have done a really good job with the piped in sound, but you're right. Like it was super noticeable when they went from nothing to the piped in the piped in sound for sure.
For sure. We got to go to our next match though. For the Impact Tag Team Championships, it's going to be VBD, Violent by Design. They going by the Freebird rule, so I don't know which members it's going to be. So it might be a combination of Rhino, Joe Doring, Eric Young, or Diener versus Rich Swann and Willie Mack versus TJP and Fallah Bahh versus the former Impact Wrestling Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers. VBD cashed in the Call Your Shot trophy that Rhino won back at Bound for Glory last year on Finjuice after Finjuice successfully defended the titles against Ace Austin and Madman Fulton a couple of weeks back. Ever since then, they've gone on a dominant run, defeating the likes of Kojima and Eddie Edwards, and now they kind of got in the way of a number one contendership matchup between Willie Mack and Rich Swann versus TJP and Fallah Bahh. It looked like we were going to get a three-way match with those three teams, but then the Good Brothers re-injected themselves into the tag team division. So who do you think wins this four-way and walks out the Impact Tag Team Champions?
This is a really tough one to call because I think VBD has been a very good team so far. Like as a stable, I like the group a lot. I like the whole vibe of the group. I like the direction of Eric Young as the leader and him almost kind of like purifying and like trying to like basically the idea is like the more you lose, like the bigger just kind of loser in life you are. Like if you're losing in wrestling, like so Eric Young's trying to like rid them of like this disease of like, you know, and and the way they like shave Diener's head, almost kind of like straight edge society style, kind of like what a cult would probably do to somebody kind of thing. You have Rhino now just looking insane. And Joe Doring is perfect for that group. Like and I'm a big Joe Doring guy, like him and Kojima was it Against All Odds? When that match, that's my type of wrestling. Like if you were to ask me like, hey, Steven, what, like, I've never seen wrestling before. I know Hulk Hogan did it back in the day. I don't know anything else about it. I would be like, all right, you need to watch matches like GCW this past weekend did Brian Keith versus AJ Gray. Like, that's my type of match. Like an All Japan style, hard hitting. It looks like a physical contest.
Yes.
And you know what I mean? And that's the kind of stuff that Joe Doring, I think, brings to the table. Now, as far as who's going to compete for this match, that's a good question. I think Eric Young's still probably injured. So I doubt it's him. And then I don't know who they go with for the other combination, but that's also what makes it interesting because Diener, Doring, and Rhino all bring very different things to the table. And then whoever isn't in the match is going to be on the outside, and you always got to worry about them on the outside too. So I like everything about Violent by Design. You mentioned Alexander Wolf earlier. If you were to debut, I'd match him right back with those dudes. With Eric Young, it's basically Sanity 2.0. Let the WWE fans, they're just doing the same thing. Like whatever. This will be way better than whatever they did with them in the WWE. I promise. So anyway, I love the team. So I'd like to see them hold on to the titles, but I'm a big Willie Mack guy. Like, and they have not been giving him the kind of push over the last couple of years that they should have been giving him. He lost the X Division title, I think, last year to Chris Bay. That's right. And then Chris Bay dropped it to Rohit Raju, and it's been like a kind of a revolving hot potato of the title. But Willie Mack, and here's the thing, Willie Mack, and I'm a Rich Swann guy as well. I'm a big fan of both these dudes. But there is that story that still has not been told yet with them feuding. And it's been like years of them teaming, but then we saw Rich Swann like ascend to the world title, and Willie Mack was just kind of lost in the shuffle. And Willie Mack, unfortunately, has been more pigeonholed as the guy who's like you beat up Willie Mack to get to Rich Swann. True. Yeah. And that shouldn't be the case. Like Willie Mack he's super talented, and he brings something so different to the table with like his look and like everything. Like he's just like, I think I had to have discovered him probably through PWG like a while back, and he's always been good. So it's like, I want to see them really use him. Now, maybe the best way of using him is like Rich Swann and Willie Mack win the titles here, and then that eventually becomes a reason for them to split. I don't know. But they got to do something with Willie Mack is what I'm getting at. TJP and Fallah Bahh, I think that they'll be a good addition to the match. Like Fallah Bahh, once again, he brings something totally different to the table. TJP is very good in the ring, so there'll be good stuff there. Then you got the Good Brothers, who they're always going to be a threat to the titles because of their name value and their link to AEW and everything. Although I do prefer Carl Anderson as a singles wrestler. I've said that for a long time, and he really showed why last night on AEW. Absolutely. That said, as far as a prediction, it's tough. I'm really torn between Swann and Mack and VBD. I'm going to take Swann and Mack because VBD doesn't necessarily have to take the L to lose the titles in a match like this. So that's why I'm going to go with them. I'm going to say they pin like Fallah Bahh or something like that so that it doesn't really hurt anyone in the grand scheme of things. And then you can still do Swann and Mack for the titles against VBD, just straight up, 2-on-2, down the line or the next big show or whatever. So I'm going to take Swann and Mack to win the titles. What about you?
That's a really good choice because it plays off of the history between Rich Swann and Eric Young, who, in my opinion, had Impact's best feud last year going into Bound for Glory, based off of what happened at Slammiversary and Rich Swann seeming like he was going to retire at the time before winning the Impact World Championship. So it would be cool to kind of see it transition into a tag team feud and have Willie Mack get a big win. I totally agree with you that he's been one of the most underutilized talents that Impact Wrestling has, because they've been getting such influx of talent from, WWE and other parts of the world, from AEW to New Japan. They haven't really focused in on Willie Mack, and even his run as Impact X Division champion, it was only for about like 2 months. I think he beat Ace Austin at the Rebellion special on Impact on Access TV, and then he lost the title 2 months later to Chris Bay. So I really would love to see Willie Mack get the big win, but I'm a BBD guy. I'm a Violent by Design guy. I love me some Joe Dory. He's been very underrated for one of the acquisitions that Impact Wrestling has gotten in the past year. And I think he showed a lot in that match against Kojima at the last, I think it was Against All Odds, the last Impact Plus special. And I just want to see the BBD run continue, and maybe they can, Rich Swann and Willie Mack can beat them in a regular tag team matchup and get the titles that way, because I do feel that they kind of need that run, and we need like an established babyface tag team to really get a run with those titles, and Rich Swann and Willie Mack fit the bill. And I also do agree though that I think TJP and Fallah, they're just here to take the fall, and more than likely, whoever wins is going to pin them to get the win here. We got a prediction from Eric Clark saying the Good Brothers are going to get the titles back. Please, if you're watching us with us live, whether on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, let us know your predictions for Impact Wrestling Slammiversary 2021. Trent says, I wonder if anybody comes out after Kenny and Sami's match. We're going to get to that in short order. And Joel Pearl says, the hundreds of people behind the camera making tons of noise. He is dying on that hill, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, if you're watching us, smash that like button, hit the bell to stay notified, and subscribe to the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube channel. We love the support, love the comments in the live chat. Keep them coming in. We got 2 more matches to go over, and this one I'm looking forward to the most, Steven. For the Impact Wrestling X Division Championship, Ultimate X returns as Josh Alexander will defend against former champions Petey Williams, Rohit Raju, Chris Bay, Ace Austin, and the only man that hasn't won the X Division Championship in this matchup, Trey Miguel. This match has come into fruition after Against All Odds. There was a 5-way with the 5 challengers to determine the number 1 contender for the X Division Championship, but Madman Fulton injected himself into that matchup and caused a no contest, even though it looked like Ace Austin was going to get the victory. And I've never really seen a multi-man matchup end by like no contest or a disqualification, so that was a little bit off, but it got us here. It got us back to the Ultimate X, so I can forgive that. The Ultimate X is the premier stipulation match in Impact Wrestling history. So who do you think wins this one? Is Josh Alexander going to retain the title, or are we going to have a new champion?
This one's another one that's just really difficult to call. Josh Alexander as X Division champion, I have really enjoyed. I love that they figured something good to do with him after the split with Ethan Page and Ethan going over to AEW, because that was a concern, was like, is Josh Alexander going to get lost in the mix? But like, I've been seeing him in like indies such as I believe like AAW and stuff over the years. And like, I've seen him as a singles guy more than I've actually seen him as a tag team guy, but on TV, I've seen him more as a tag team guy. So it's like, I didn't know what they'd do with him, if they try to like pair him with another partner, or if they'd like, maybe just get lost in the shuffle, or what they do. Him as X Division champion, I never saw that coming. Like, I didn't think that would be the route they'd go, because he doesn't fit the traditional kind of like high flying type of, it's not about weight limits, it's about no limits type style. But he has been great as the X Division champion. I love that he sticks true to like his style of wrestling, but he's just wrestling guys that can really, really go also. So like, the matches have been great. So I don't really want to see him lose the title. Now, if I got to go through process of elimination, Petey Williams, I don't see him winning, but I think that he's always good for a few nice Canadian destroyers, pop the crowd, all that good stuff. I've always liked Petey Williams, but I just don't think he's that guy for them at this point. Trey Miguel, he's a real dark horse in the match, because he's a guy who has been kind of lost in the shuffle since I say returning to Impact, however you look at it, when Wentz and what are their names in WWE?
Wesley and Nash Carter.
Wesley,
MSK.
yes, MSK. Have they even explained what MSK means?
No, they still don't.
Okay.
But I'm still going with marijuana smoking kids.
That's exactly what I'm going with. But Trey, for whatever reason, he came back to Impact Wrestling, and he's got a ton of talent too. He's another guy that he's got kind of lost in the shuffle, but this is a big opportunity for him to get a title and get a lot of spotlight back on him.
Yeah,
you got Ace Austin, who in my opinion is probably the most valuable guy Impact Wrestling has long term. Like if they can lock him down for like a handful of years, and I'll get more to that when we get to the main event because I have some thoughts on the matchup. But Ace Austin, I couldn't be a bigger Ace Austin guy. Like I think he is the future of wrestling.
He's like a young AJ Styles, in my opinion.
Yes. He can do anything in the ring, and he has a different type of look with like the purple hair and Madman Fulton is a great heater, bodyguard, whatever for him too. And they can also tag team together. Like Ace Austin's got it all. I'm a big Ace Austin fan. Like, so my point is like Ace Austin in any match, I'm okay with him winning. Like, I don't care if it's a title on the line, what title it is. Like Ace Austin winning, I'm good with. Chris Bay, you can pretty much say the same thing about Chris Bay that I said about Ace Austin.
Yeah.
Those are the two dudes, along with Willie Mack, depending on how they use Willie Mack. Those are the guys that, like, if you can lock them down, that is the future of your company, these two guys. So same thing. If Chris Bay won the title, I'd be obviously fine with it. Now, the downside to Chris Bay and Ace Austin winning, though, is that we've seen it. We've seen them as the X Division champions. I'd like to see them do something different. Same with Rohit Raju. We've seen him as the X Division champion, but I think his title run could have been better, and it isn't his fault. It's the way it was booked. He was booked as like kind of a he needed loopholes and to cheat to retain his title over and over. Now, that's just being a good heel, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was. But he's got Shira on his side, who's a big, strong presence for him, similar to Ace Austin. He can tag with the guy, or he's got a bodyguard in him. And I'm a big fan of him, even back to his days as Hakeem Zayn. I saw him first at Glory Pro Wrestling probably like 4 years ago or whatever it was. And the dude is just, he keeps getting better and better and better and better. So I like everybody in this match. I think this is going to be, this will probably be the match of the night, like as far as like from bell to bell. But as far as a prediction, man, I feel like I think it'd be a big mistake to take the belt off Josh Alexander right now. I really do. Because he can bring so much to that division that we haven't really seen before. Whereas anyone else winning this match, I think it just kind of goes back to the norm of what we are used to seeing in the X division, if that makes sense, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The X division has always been one of the more entertaining aspects of TNA or Impact Wrestling. But Josh Alexander he's on a roll right now. And that Iron Man match he had with TJP was awesome.
Yeah, awesome. One of the TV matches of the year, in my opinion, and 100%. it's so underrated and not talked about too much. But from bell to bell, like I know a lot of people, don't watch Impact Wrestling week to week, but it's available on their YouTube channel. Go out of your way to watch that because it's one of the best wrestling matches of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like that's one where even if you don't watch Impact Wrestling or have any interest in it, and that other side of it is there's a lot of people that don't like TJP for reasons that don't have to do with wrestling. I get all that too. But if you want to just be entertained by just a solid hour, or it wind up being like an hour and 5 or 10 minutes technically of just great professional wrestling, I can't recommend that match enough. So 100% with that. Who do you have for your prediction?
It's tough because I want to agree with you. You're going with Josh Alexander, right?
I am.
I really want to agree with you because of option C. And they haven't really utilized option C in such a long time. And Josh Alexander seems like the guy that could do that and move up to the heavyweight title. And, if you're new to Impact Wrestling, the X Division champion has the option C of they can cash in the X Division championship at any time to get a shot at the heavyweight championship. I think it's only a Destination X. I think when Austin Aries did it the second time, he made it that you can do it anytime now.
Oh, okay. I completely forgot about that. Okay.
Because I believe that's what Brian Cage did to get his shot at the Impact World Championship when he was X Division champ. He never lost it. He cashed it in as option C. So I think they could go the same direction with Josh Alexander, but Josh Alexander has already gone on record and said that he won't do that because he does, appreciate and he does love the X Division and wants that to be the main title. So that makes me go in a different direction. And looking at the build, I did an article on the Ultimate X match because this is the match I'm most interested in at Slammiversary. So I am going to give away, because I did a ranking of who I thought was the most likely to win. Josh Alexander was number 2, and number 1 was Chris Bay, because this whole buildup has been about Chris Bay, really. He's been stuck in the middle of the two sides with Ace Austin and Rohit Raju, with Shera and Madman Fulton trying to beat down all the babyface competitors in this matchup. And Chris Bay was kind of in the middle where he didn't want to choose a side. He didn't want to go with the heels because he doesn't want to do it that way. He didn't want to go with the babyfaces because he's had his differences with all those guys. But he finally decided that he had to choose the side that was more beneficial to him. So because there's been so much focus on him, and because, in my opinion, out of all the guys you said, had their runs and it was like cut short, I feel like Chris Bay's X Division run was criminally cut short. Like, he was champion for, I think, about like 6 to 8 weeks. It was ridiculous because it felt like a triumphant title win when he beat Willie Mack at Slammiversary, because he just came into the company. It was his first big win, his first big title. And then in August, that was in, I think it was July or June for Slammiversary last year. And then in August, he loses the title in a 3-way where he doesn't really take the pin, or it was like confusing. But so I want Chris Bay to kind of get his proper title reign, and he is more of the guy that I could see cashing in the X Division championship and moving up, but I want him to have a proper run with that title. So I'm going to go with Chris Bay.
That's a great analysis on that, for real. Because that has been a really interesting part of the story for the buildup. Like, when everyone else was fighting, Chris Bay would be like on the outside taking video with his phone and stuff. Like, he was kind of staying out of it. And I mean, the option C thing, because I had it just fixated in my head that it was a Destination X thing, because that's what it used to be.
Yeah.
And so, but that does bring a whole other element to this. And that can be said for a lot of these guys. Like, I've been complaining about Ace Austin not getting in the world title mix. And like, this would be, if he wins, him or Chris Bay, if a win for Chris Bay or Ace Austin equals them getting in the world title mix, I am 1 billion% for that. Same for Josh Alexander and Rohit Raju, to be honest. I'm not a Petey Williams hater. I actually really big fan of Petey Williams, like, historically speaking. I just don't think that's what I just don't think he's like the future of their company, but he still definitely serves a purpose and definitely has earned a place on the show 100%. So I'm glad you brought up the option C, because that really could be a big underlying story of the outcome of this match.
Yes, and perfect transition, because we got to talk about the main event finally for the Impact World Championship. It's now going to be no disqualification. Kenny Omega going one-on-one with Sami Callihan. Back at Against All Odds, Kenny Omega successfully defended the Impact World Championship against Moose in a great match, in my opinion. After the match, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega tried to jump Moose. The lights went out. Sami Callihan showed up. He nailed all the guys with bats. He looked like he was going to do the same thing that he did to Eddie Edwards, where he almost made him blind with a bat and a steel chair to Kenny Omega, but Don Callis fired him. A week later, Impact Anthem executives put Tommy Dreamer in power, and he fired Don Callis as EVP, as art imitating life, as a per se. And Sami Callihan was injected back into the Slammiversary main event to verse Kenny Omega. It was last week at the contract signing that Sami Callihan was arrested because of fake tapes made by Don Callis, which was apparently it was the Swingers Palace guys, Johnny Swinger and Johnny Bravo, working with Don Callis to basically to basically
frame him.
frame Sami Callihan, some goofy stuff. The lights went out. Sami Callihan came out. He gave Kenny Omega a package power driver and then a power bomb through the table. And then he made the challenge for this no disqualification match at Slammiversary. I totally agree with what you said earlier. I feel like this would have been better if the roles reversed, if Sami got the shot at Against All Odds and if Moose got the shot here. But they have been building this for a little while with Sami Callihan, with Don Callis fearing Sami Callihan going up against Kenny Omega because Sami Callihan is unpredictable. Also, to mention another article I did the 6 greatest Slammiversary matches of all time, and Sami Callihan has the resume to be considered one of the Mr. Slammiversary guys because he's had match of the year candidates against Pentagon Jr. and Tessa Blanchard in back-to-back years. He's main evented a couple of Slammiversaries, so this will be another time he main events. So do you think Sami walks out with the Impact World Championship, or does Kenny Omega's belt collecting reign continue?
So the thing with Sami is, if you look at his actual like pay-per-view record over the last couple of years, his only win in the last like 2 years on pay-per-view is over Sam Beal in basically a squash match. So like I have a lot of thoughts on this whole thing. So like Sami, I'm not like a Sami Callihan hater. I'm not one of these people who like, because like you mentioned, like honestly, I think that his stuff with Tessa was like some of the best stuff Impact's done in recent memory. Like I really do. But the problem with all this is I don't think the fan base wants Sami in this position. Like I think when you have that X Division title match we just talked about, take pretty much anyone out of that and replace them with Sami Callihan and everyone's happy. Like if this was Ace Austin versus Kenny Omega, imagine the match that those two guys would have, and you wouldn't have to hide behind the hardcore aspect. Because that's another thing I was saying for weeks leading up to this. I was like, I bet you they're going to turn into a street fight or a hardcore match or something. Because that's the. I'm not saying Sami Callihan's incapable of having like a solid match without it, but that's really when he has his better matches. It's going to be some sort of stipulation attached to it. Yeah. But even then, he normally loses. So you have this one company over here in AEW that and the reason I even bring that up is because obviously Kenny's the champion for both companies. In AEW, wins and losses matter. You have records, you have a ranking system similar to the UFC and all that stuff. Sami Callihan loses and loses and loses and loses, and now it's just like, I'm crazy, so I'm going to take the title from you. It's like, okay, like, and he's still a heel, like at the end of the day. Yeah. And here's the thing. I think that Kenny's going to get cheered over him live. So this is all going to backfire massively if Sami Callihan actually wins this match, I think. And that being said, Sami Callihan wins the title. Okay. And then what? Are we living in a world where now we have Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards again, like two guys that like, when once again, it's nothing against those two guys in particular. It's just knowing that there are these young, hungry talents that are super, super talented and it's a historical mistake that Impact Wrestling / TNA has done for decades at this point, where it's like you had all these guys who wound up becoming massive stars in other companies because Impact had them, but instead they were pushing the older guys or the guys with more star power or whatever it was, and they kept losing their future over and over again. And I do get concerned about that in these kind of situations too. When you have guys like Ace Austin, Chris Bay, Trey Miguel, Willie Mack, I mean, you can go on and on about all the potential there with all these guys, but you just keep going back to Sami Callihan. You just keep going back to Eddie Edwards, and it's like, why are you doing this? When I at the end of the day, Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan in this no DQ match, it'll probably be entertaining. There will be a lot of shortcuts in the match. There's gonna be interferences and weapons and a whole bunch of stuff. But you wouldn't need any of that if it was just Ace Austin versus Kenny Omega. Like it would just, you just have a solid wrestling match. I think part of it probably has to play into like Kenny's apparently like pretty banged up also. Yeah. But I don't know if that really helps him. Like if it was him and Ace Austin and he's banged up, you might not get the same Kenny Omega match you're expecting. But in a hardcore match or whatever, I mean, I'm sure if he's banged up, it's not going to really help him to get hit by chairs and kendo sticks and whatever else Sami Callihan's going to use on him. So that all being said, as far as a prediction, I mean, I just can't pick Sami Callihan in this match. I just can't do it. Because I just don't. Now, you got my wheels spinning now though more with this whole option C thing. Because if they truly can cash in at any moment, I think the winner of the X Division title match either needs to come out right after the main event and win the title from whoever wins this, or do a Seth Rollins move and insert themselves as a triple threat. Because that changes everything. Like if Ace Austin or Chris Bay wins the X Division title, or even Josh Alexander retains it, and they're like, okay, I'm challenging right now. I'm challenging Kenny Omega for the title right now. It'd be like, I'm all for that, especially if Sami won. If Sami somehow beat Kenny and he's standing there with the title at the end of the show and the fans are just like, oh, like really? like no one's going to be hyped up for it.
No.
But then like Josh Alexander comes out and like J drillers him and cashes the thing in, everyone would be like, oh my God, like, okay, we're here for this. You know what I mean? So, now that said, the same with Kenny. If Kenny retains and like he gets beat up really badly and he can barely stand and he's all beat up, and then Alexander, Bay, or Austin comes out and boom, finisher, and then they pin Kenny and they're actual baby faces and they're like, and the fans go home happy. The other side of this, of course, is the Forbidden Door. Fans are coming back. I want to see Kenny with all the titles and going company to company. But there's also an interesting story in him losing the Impact title, losing the AAA title, and then being this paranoid, crazy AEW champion that has to now fight, Hangman Page, who like they have all that history, and now he's even more weird and on edge because he's lost these other titles. So there's a lot of routes they can go with this, but at the end of the day, I just cannot pick Sami Callihan to win this match. I gotta go Kenny Omega to retain. What about you?
I am totally in agreement. Kenny Omega needs to win this matchup because although Sami Callihan's reign as Impact World Champion was another one where I felt was cut too soon because they went directly into the Tessa Blanchard, the next chapter in that rivalry. I think they could have gotten a little bit more legs on his championship run because he beat Brian Cage and then immediately was back in his feud with Tessa Blanchard. I just feel that this is not the right time. Kenny Omega needs to win here because I feel like that is a great direction what you came up with of Kenny Omega losing the Impact World title, losing the AAA title, and then being more paranoid. But I think that the start of his fall from grace is going to be at All Out when Hangman Page hits the buckshot lariat and beats him for the AEW World Championship. And then it sets up Bound for Glory to be the place where Impact has to give him a challenger to beat him. And that's another reason why I'm going with Chris Bay to win the Ultimate X match, because I think that Josh Alexander is the guy to beat Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship. Because like we said, the Impact match of the year, I think it's already sold up. I think it's that Iron Man match with TJP. And Josh Alexander has just put out so many great matches, whether it's against Ace Austin, whether it's against El Phantasmo. This matchup at the pay-per-view, the Ultimate X, is odds-on favorite to be the match of the night here. I just feel like he is due for a huge push, and that needs to happen in the months leading up to Bound for Glory, and he needs the guy to dethrone Kenny Omega for the World Championship. But it could be interesting. We could have somebody that we're not thinking of off the top of our head as a WWE release or someone that's a free agent come out and challenge Kenny after this matchup. There's a lot of different directions they can go. New Japan has some big US shows coming up in California. Maybe they have a New Japan star out there. Maybe Switchblade Jay White, he might be in America. He can come out and challenge Kenny Omega. He's beaten Kenny Omega in the past for the IWGP US Championship. Maybe he can come into Impact Wrestling and challenge Kenny Omega. There's a lot of different things. We did see the Bullet Club logo during the world will change here. So there's a lot of interesting possibilities that they can go, but we're in agreement. Kenny Omega is going to beat Sami Callihan to end the show. We got Romeo in the live chat said, followed the baby face turn with a big win. So he's agreeing with me that Chris Bay gets the win there. We got CM Chris, one of the elite good eggs, the mods over at Wrestling Daily, joining us, saying hi, guys. Romeo says, keep Kenny healthy for All Out. I don't know how healthy he's going to be with versus Sami Callihan in a no DQ match. CM Chris said, so many ways for this Sami Kenny match to go, really. He also says this DQ match can be good for Sami, but can mean interference on Kenny's behalf. Do you think that the Good Brothers or Don Callis or even maybe a Young Bucks appearance happens here at Slammiversary, Steven?
I think it'd be smart. I really do. But there's like, that's the thing. Like, it can. This is the reason that, like, I think Sami Callihan has like a shot at winning the title, is because with the no DQ stipulation, you could have a scenario where like the Good Brothers like come out and then like the Young Bucks come out, like the fans would pop huge to see the Young Bucks and Impact and all this stuff, but they'd pop even bigger if like the Young Bucks are, you know, whatever they're in. Maybe, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and think that like all these people are gonna actually show up on the show, but like, if something happened where, you know, but like no one's helping Sami Callihan, but like, you know, Moxley popped up and started fighting off, you know, Moxley and Kingston show up and they're like fighting off the Young Bucks and the Elite and stuff, kind of carrying over from Impacct. And that clears the ring out. And like Moxley and Sami have a link from their indie past from before and everything. So like, there's just so many directions they can go with this, but I think it'd be smart if they could get some more people from the Elite. I mean, even like Hangman, how nuts would that be if like the Elite comes out to help and then like Hangman and like the Dark Order come out and they fight off the Elite to get them out of the ring, and that's what leads to Sami winning or whatever. I mean, so yeah, there's a lot of options here. But yeah, I don't know what they're gonna actually go with or what they'll actually do. I think the other side of it too is like, you know, I know that AEW hasn't really been talking a lot about Impact on the AEW shows. And that's been a big criticism so far.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I don't think there's that many people that are watching Impact that don't watch AEW, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And we saw that last week at Road Rager when they gave the "You Fired" chant to Don Callis.
Exactly. Great point. So, you know, I don't think it's a great look to have Kenny lose to anybody right now when he's heading into the Hangman match. Yeah. And even then, I don't know if Hangman actually wins the title on that show or not. Like, I think that Hangman should be the one to beat Kenny for the AEW title at some point. I just don't know if it happens at All Out or if they stretch it farther to like, you know, later in the year, or like at was it Full Gear maybe, where they so. I mean, I don't know the timeline with all this, but I would protect Kenny as much as possible. But then you also got the thing with Andrade coming up in AAA, and like Andrade would obviously make a lot of sense to be the AAA champion. And so there's just so many moving pieces. But what makes me so excited about all of it is with fans back, and the same with the WWE, to be fair. I'm very critical of the WWE's current product, but like, you gotta believe that all these companies have been saving stuff for when fans come back. So I'm expecting a lot of really cool stuff. Like I really do expect, even though, you know, Ring of Honor doesn't have a lot of buzz about them right now, I think that they're going to get involved. I think MLW is going to get involved. I think we're going to see like pretty much all the major companies that aren't. I mean, even Wheeler Yuta, he's the IWTV champion. He was on Dynamite last night. That's awesome. Like, there's so much possibility right now in the world of wrestling, and I'm really, really excited for it. But that all said, I think anyone watching this right now is all probably in agreement that's just straight up, at the end of the day, Kenny Omega should retain this title over Sami Callihan.
I think we are all in agreement there. Thank you so much for everyone who's been watching this Impact Slammiversary 2021 preview and predictions. And I want to thank you, Steven, for joining me, breaking down the card, you know, talking about everything involving Impact Wrestling. You watch it on a weekly basis over on the Fightful Twitch stream. Please tell them where they can find you on social media, what you got going on later today and the rest of the week on all the projects that you're doing. You're a very busy man, so let the people know where they can find you.
First and foremost, thank you very much for having me on the show, SP3. Very, very much appreciated. This was a lot of fun. As far as tonight, it'll be me, Joel Pearl, and you on the Fightful Twitch stream for Impact Wrestling. So you can basically get more preview of Slammiversary tonight with the three of us. That'll be on twitch.tv/FightfulGaming. That's a lot of fun. For those of you who've never joined us before but are planning to tonight, we actually are allowed to put the Impact stream on the show for you. So like you see that you watch Impact with us, and then it's the three of us in little screens on the show. So you get our commentary. A lot of the time we're not even talking about Impact. We're just kind of kicking it and just like talking about whatever, but we got Impact playing. We interact with the chat the whole night, answering questions, reading out comments and statements and stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's very interactive. And I think that anyone who watched this would really enjoy being a part of that. That's every single Thursday night. We go live pretty much right as the show starts around 8 p.m. Eastern time. This weekend we have speaking of Slammiversary, I'll be on the Fightful post show. I do all of those with Sean, but this time, and Denise started coming on with us on the last pay-per-view. I know it'll be me and Denise for sure on the Slammiversary post show. That'll be at Fightful's YouTube channel. And Sean, I think, is going to try to join us, but he'll be in Nashville for the show itself. So we don't know logistically exactly if that'll work out or not, but we will definitely have a post show, and me and Denise will definitely be a part of it. So definitely check that out if you want something to watch right after Impact. As far as the rest of the stuff I got going on, every Sunday, the Fightful Select Weekender podcast, it's on Patreon or FightfulSelect.com. We'll say that. And you can watch or you can listen to me talk about the world of independent professional wrestling. That's my biggest passion in the world of wrestling is the indies. I love independentwrestling.tv, Fight TV, all those kind of companies that I can just binge, just quote unquote lower level, less known pro wrestling. That's really my jam. And then AEW is like, as far as mainstream, if you want to know about me, just watch AEW. That's me as a wrestling fan. I respect Tony Khan so much for basically having a fig fed, like a wrestling figure federation of his with real people. Like that's like the coolest thing in the world to me. Like getting all your favorite wrestlers and making them have actual shows together. But yeah, that's over at FightfulSelect.com. That's every Sunday, the Weekender podcast. My personal show is called Fight Talk. If you want to buy any merch, that's available with links on my Twitter. And I do a weekly MMA show. I do all the audio with me and Jesse Davin or me and Doug Bateman. All goes up there for our live chats. And then I do random interviews. The latest one I did was like last week with MLJ, who is the ring announcer and commentator for companies like GCW, Violence X Suffering, and that kind of stuff. Emel's a longtime wrestling fan. Super cool, fun conversation. We actually got into a conversation about what percentage of wrestling we thought was real when we were kids. So like basically like he had figured out that like WWF was 50% real, WCW was 75% real, and ECW was 95% real. Like those are the kind of conversations to expect on my podcast. If you want to check it out, that's available on all major platforms. Fight Talk Podcast, and everything else I do, I just keep updated on Twitter. Fight Talk _ Follow me. I appreciate it. So that's everything I got going on. And once again, dude, it's gonna be fun because like right after this, I'm going to go hit golf balls with my dad. It's our Thursday tradition. Nice. I'm going to come back, shower, hang out, and then we'll be right back together for more Impact Wrestling stuff. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. It's an Impact Wrestling day. Go over and follow Steven Jensen over on the Twitter machine, over on Twitch, Fightful. We're going to go into the Go Home show for Slammiversary. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at TrueHeelSP3. And I'm going to be right back here tomorrow as we got another pay-per-view preview, this time for WWE Money in the Bank. I'm going to be joined by Phil Lindsay of Bleacher Report, as well as pro wrestling manager, intelligent mind of the wrestling world, the former manager of the Prototype, aka John Cena in OVW, Kenny Bolin, right back here, 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Money in the Bank preview, the first pay-per-view back with fans. for WWE. So a lot of great stuff going on the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube channel. So hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to stay notified, give this video a thumbs up, share this video on all your favorite social media platforms. So until tomorrow, for Steven Jensen, it is me, your True Heel Phenom SP3. This has been our Slammiversary 2021 preview and predictions. We are signing off until next time.